Hello everyone, we are from Group 5. We will present about the VAT Sanction. Here I am, Pausis Abiu, and my friend.
Ricky Martin Giovanni.
In this table of content, we will explain about first fine, second interest, third increment, fourth penalties, and fifth expiration. Fines. The following value are imposed for administrative sanction. Fines. If the periodical annual tax return is late, it will be subject to a fine of 100,000 until 500,000 per annual tax return. If the annual tax return is submitted late, a fine of 100,000 until 1 million per annual tax return will be imposed. Taxpayers who make their own correction and have not been investigated will be subject to fine of 150% of the amount of underpaid tax. Next, entrepreneurs who have been confirmed as taxable entrepreneur but did not make a tax invoice or have made a tax invoice but did not arrive on time will be subject to a fine of 2% of tax imposition basis. Entrepreneurs who have been confirmed as taxable entrepreneurs but do not fill out a complex tax invoice will be subject to a penalty of 2% of the tax imposition basis. Taxable entrepreneur who report tax invoice but does not comply with the tax invoice issuance period will be subject to a penalty of 2% of the tax imposition basis. Next, interest. The amount of interest will be calculated based on certain percentage of an amount, starting from the time the interest becomes a right/obligation until it is finally paid. Next. Based on the updated data on the interest rate for tax administration sanction from the Decree Ministry of Finance number 60/UNK 10/2021, the following are tax sanction rates based on the type of declaration. In this table, we can see there are nine types of tax sanction, and this tax sanction interest rate start from 0.51%, then 0.93%, then 1.35% plus 1.76%, and then there is uplift start from 0%, then 5%, and 10%, and then 15%. Next. Based on the updated tax return interest data from the Ministry of Finance, the following is the tax return rate based on the type of tax. The type of taxation: first, refund of the overpaid tax after 1 month, tax interest rates become 0.51%. Second, late issuance of overpaid tax assessment, tax interest rate become 0.51%. And third, tax audit discontinue, tax interest rate become 0.51%. Next, use of tax administration sanction interest rate. Penalties related to annual tax return. Tax penalty interest rate plus 5% slash 12. Penalty for not paying annual tax return underpayment. Tax penalty interest rate plus 10% slash 12. Fines for not paying the underpaid tax and getting tax underpayment assessment letter. Tax penalty interest rate plus 5% slash 12. The imposition of sanction is a maximum of 24 months or 2 years. Next. Fines related to criminal acts due to disclosure of untruth. The penalty rate for disclosing untruth or data discrepancies in the crime as context of well-attaching information as whose contents are incorrect is 100% of the credit without amount of tax unpaid when the disclosure of tax reporting is incorrect. Termination of investigation. The termination of the investigation of criminal acts in the field of taxation is only carried out after the taxpayer has paid off the tax debt that is not or underpaid or should be returned on is added with administrative sanction in the form of a fine of 3 times the amount of tax that is not or underpaid, or which should not be returned. Next. Okay, the next presentation will be presented by my friend Ricky Martin.
Next point is increment. One of the administrative sanctions that is most avoided by taxpayer is the increase in administrative sanctions. This is because if the taxpayer is subject to an increase in sanction, the amount of tax that must be paid can be doubled. The increased sanction is calculated by a certain percentage, which is sent from the amount of underpaid tax. Percentage of the incremental administrative penalty. First, declaration of contract of the SPT before the issuance of the SKP is subject to an increase of 50% from the underpaid tax. If the SPT is not submitted as stated in the warning letter, the PPN or NBM that should not be compensated or not the 0% that is not fulfilled in Article 28 and 29, namely, a PPA that is not underpaid is subject to an increase of 50% from PPA that is not underpaid. B. Not or least dedicated/collected/deposit will be subject to an increase of 100% of the income tax that is not less, deducted and collected. C. Unpaid. Underpaid PPBM is subject to an increase of 100% from the unpaid or underpaid PPN or PPBM. Tax underpayment on SKP KWT will be subject to an increase of 100% of the total tax underpayment. Next, penalties and crimes. Based on the tax law, there are 3 types of criminal sanctions, including first, criminal fines. Imposed on parties who commit criminal acts of a criminal nature. Criminal sanctions are imposed on taxpayers and are also threatened with the tax officials or third parties who are proven to have violated applicable norms. Second, confinement. This criminal sanction is only imposed on taxpayers who commit violation. For example, the taxpayer himself or a third party. The provisions of this act are the same as those punishable by a criminal fine. However, confinement means that the party who commits the violation will be locked up. And last, imprisonment. The same is imprisonment. Imprisonment is a punishment for deprivation of liberty. The threat of imprisonment is not addressed to third parties, but only to officials and taxpayers. Next, expiration. Legal basis of tax invoice validity period. Provisions regarding the validity period of tax invoice are regulated in first, Law Number 42 of 2009 concerning value-added tax and sales tax on luxury goods. Second, VAT Law Article 13, Paragraph 1. Article 13, Paragraph 1 of the VAT Law applies the following provision governing the validity period of tax invoice. First, tax invoice must be made at the time of submission of BKP or GKP. When receiving payment, invoice must be submitted at the time of payment before submission and at the time of receipt of the payment from. Input tax that can be credited but has not been credited with output tax in the same tax period can be credited in the next tax period no later than 3 months after the end of the relevant tax period, with condition before it is charged as an expense and has not been audited. If the tax invoice has passed the time limit for its creation but has not passed 3 months, since it should have been met, the PKP of the seller or service provider may be subject to tax sanction, but the PKP of the service recipient can still be credited. The validity period of a tax invoice is expired if its creation has exceeded a period of 3 months from the time it was made. Next. Consequence of expired tax invoice validity. First, even the tax invoice must be made following the validity period of the tax invoice in Article 13, Paragraph 1 of the VAT law. In practice, it often happens that the tax invoice expires, past the specified tax invoice validity period. The VAT law explicitly states that a tax invoice must be made at the time of submission of BKP or GKP, or at the time of receipt of payments in the payment voucher before the submission is made. If you pass this time limit, the PKP will be subject to a fine of 2% of the tax baseline (DPP). Next, making tax invoice with crediting tax invoice are two different things, although they can be related because in the end the tax invoice created by the PKP will be credited as input tax by the PKP counterpart. The time limit for making a tax invoice is for the seller's PKP, while the input tax credit is on buyer's PKP side. Okay, that's all for our presentation. Don't forget to like and comment. Thank you for your attention. See you.